All right, guys, so that marks 8:05. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So first of all, I'd like to introduce ourselves as a company. So we are NSTEM. We are an organization that works towards providing STEM opportunities to students all over. We have some really great interns, including Guadalupe, who's here with us tonight, and some others in the crowd. We're so happy to have you guys. You guys are all amazing. Thanks for everything you guys do. So tonight, first of all, welcome. We have the honor of talking about Hispanic Heritage Month. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the opportunities and challenges for Hispanic and Latinx communities in STEM. So we have some really great panelists here tonight, 3 of them who are very accomplished in their own field, and we're very excited to have them. And we can't wait to talk to them. And if you guys have any questions throughout the entire webinar, please feel free to just throw them in the Q&A and we'll try to get to them. We'll try to have our amazing panelists answer some of them for you guys. So just a couple of introductions. So first I'm going to introduce myself. My name's Albert Nova. I am a senior at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, and I'm currently studying environmental science. So both my parents come from El Salvador, and that's something I'm very proud of, and I'm very excited to talk to you guys about our topic tonight. Next, I'd like to introduce my great friend, Guadalupe.
Thank you, Albert. So my name is Guadalupe. I'm from Argentina, Buenos Aires. I'm my senior year in high school. I'm about to finish, so I'm both terrified and utterly excited. Primero que nada, bienvenidos a todos. Estamos muy emocionados por tenerlos acá. Tenemos 3 asombrosos invitados para que respondan nuestras preguntas, así que let's get started.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Guadalupe. So first, I'd like to start introducing my panelists. So if you could say a couple of words about yourself, Dr. Moray.
Oh, sure. Nice to meet you, and thank you for having us, both Albert and Guadalupe, and for National STEM Honor Society. Honored to be on the panel with my co-panelists. My name is Jose Moray. Nací en Cagua, Puerto Rico. I grew up in Puerto Rico till I was about 8 years old, and then moved to Florida, and then grew up the rest of my life in Florida. I've been in tech for a couple decades now, physician by formal training. I'm an Eisenhower Fellow, and I'm CEO of Ad Astra Media, and what we focus on is creating educational and entertaining content that shows diverse representation within STEM to inspire kids from all diverse communities to go into the fields of science and technology.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Moray. So up next, we'd like to introduce Jose. If you could say a couple of words about yourself.
Hi, folks. I'm Jose Marquez, and I'm the CEO of Tech Latino, an organization that has been around for 27 years. 24 years. It feels like 27, but it's 24. I also founded the Georgia Latino Film Alliance, and I'm a member of the NSTEM Advisory Council. I've been doing technology pretty much since 1988, and I've seen things come and I've seen things go, and I've seen a lot of things that were like, you could say, whoa.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jose. And of course, last but not least, I'd love to introduce Juliette. So if you could say a couple words about yourself.
Sure. Hi, hola. I'm Juliette Marquez. I'm a proud Boricua and Cubana. I was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. So I'm a Puerto Rican Cuban American raised in the South. Woo! And I am now the founder and CEO of Collective Moxie, which is a consulting firm dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so I consult organizations large and small, nonprofits and for-profits on narrative change work. So much like my fellow panelists, really talking about how can we change the narrative about and expose more and more stories from more and more communities, including our own. And so I'm proud to be working on several projects as well that do that. Previous to that, I've worked at NBC, Google, and Disney in various different roles, tackling diversity, equity, and inclusion. Very proudly in my time at Google, I worked on STEM advocacy in media and really looking at changing the narratives and flipping stereotypes around who can be in the professions. Working on many, many movies and television shows, including Black Panther, Powerpuff Girls, and The Foster lectures on freeform, amongst many others. And now I'm really proud to be working in lockstep with Jose at the Georgia Latino Film Alliance as the new board chair, just named last month. So it's really quite an honor to both be back in Atlanta and in Georgia, but also be working alongside Jose to keep championing our community and our voices and our stories. And I'm so excited to be here, especially talking about anything having to do with the intersection of tech and media, which there is much to discuss these days. So excited to get to know you all better too.
All right, awesome. Thank you guys so much for introducing yourself. We are all so excited to have you here, and I'm so happy to have a great conversation with you guys today. So let's just dive right into this. So like we said, the topic tonight are the challenges and opportunities that come with being a Latino or Latinx person in STEM communities. So as a Latino personally, there's a lot of challenges that I've personally faced. I'm sure you guys have had your own challenges, many similar and different challenges. Mine's mainly being growing up with parents who, their native language is Spanish. So first I'd like to talk a little bit about the challenges that come with that. So me personally, going into college, going through school, I did not have much help myself because my parents didn't really know how to help me out. Honestly, they offered me plenty of support and guidance, but when it came to actual academics and applying and, writing and math and literally anything STEM related, they had no idea. They went to the third grade in education back in El Salvador and they came here and that's all the education they've ever experienced. So that's sort of my own struggles that I face being a Latino in the STEM community. So I'd love to ask you guys, what are some challenges that you guys have faced being a Latino or Latinx person of the STEM community, whether it's through education or your own career that you guys have gone through? And I'd love to open up the floor. So if anybody would like to speak on this, please do.
I can take a first crack at it if no one else wants to jump in. But I would say, we all have different stories and we all have different challenges, and I think there's some similar veins that will come through for everybody to a certain degree. But yeah, having if you come from a lower socioeconomic status or middle income to low income, you're going to have similar kinds of struggles, right? Not understanding how higher education works at some points, whether it is just bachelor's or then beyond bachelor's to get a master's degree or a doctorate degree, understanding the nuances of what's available to you, how can you get support. That is something that's going to be challenging to folks. Not having the same resources to start with compared to everyone else is always kind of a challenge. One thing unique to any kind of underrepresented group, whether it's Latinos or Latinas or Latinx or any kind of other minority groups, is the fact that oftentimes as you continue to be successful and as you break barriers and you shatter ceilings, you're in that same situation constantly where you're always the person that's different from the rest of the group. And that challenge, that unique kind of feeling of, sometimes people call it perhaps imposter syndrome or whatnot, of do I actually belong here? I think that's something that many people struggle with. And I think that's something that you always struggle with wherever you are, wherever you go, because you will always be unique. And then the other thing that you will face, that sometimes when you're in those circles, those new circles, regardless of what level, if you're at the executive level, middle management level, if you're at the base level, there will always be gatekeepers that look different than you, that talk different than you, and that may sometimes have either overt bias or racism towards you, or inadvertent or unknown bias that will come out slowly but surely. And understanding that that is something that, until equity is reached at all levels, that you will always face. It doesn't, people are always kind of thinking of, oh, if I get to the next level, if I'm the boss, or if whatever, if I get a certain level of success, things will be better. The struggle is the same. And if not, it's even more so the more successful you are, because you have a greater responsibility to be an advocate for those that come behind you. And then there's a greater spotlight on you, which can be paralyzing at times. And understanding that you have to rely on the strengths of your community, whatever that community is, whether it's your family, whether it's your heritage, and understanding that you take that with you and you use that to catapult you, and then use that to light a fire and never lose that fire, because there will always be a fight to be had and always someone to fight for.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Awesome.
And,
Yeah.
just to piggyback on what Jose is saying, I'm older than all of you guys, okay? So when I joined the workforce, it was sink or swim, okay? There was no diversity and inclusion, equity. Nobody knew any of that stuff because we were still building it as we went along. The first group that I joined was when I was at NSTEM in Verizon. It was called the HSO, the Hispanic Support Organization. And basically what it was an organization to make Hispanics feel at home at this group, but it was run by, an Anglo person. He was the executive. He was the one who held the purse strings. We couldn't do anything except what he wanted us to do. It was very hard to be in that mentality unless you were the best at the game that you did. I have this work ethic that's insane, right? I'll work 17 hours. I won't go home until it's done. And that was my biggest skill. My biggest skill is not that I'm good at engineering or that that I've got this great personality that I can talk to the janitor as well as the CEO and everybody in between. My thing was that I can outwork everybody. And if you tell me no, or if you put an obstacle in my way, I'm going to knock it down. And so basically for me, it's always been, okay, what fight do I have next? I've been fighting for the last 24 years for this organization, for our community, because our community needed us. There was nothing for us. Even the HSO was a kind of organization. I went on to found that AT&T, one of the founders of HISPA, and we started all these different organizations so that we can find a place to belong. It wasn't BRGs at the time. It wasn't any of that stuff. And quite frankly, BRGs at that time were literally, but when we founded Lista, it was for our community to empower themselves with technology because we were being left behind. And that was the biggest obstacle of them all, because I would say to myself, well, how did I get, of course I went to school for engineering. Of course I was in the military. Of course, that's where I found out what the internet was. But it was the fights that I had afterwards that no matter how much I had done, I had to keep on, I had a situation with when I was working at Merrill. And I was very lucky to work in many places because since I was the first one really that spoke Spanish and English, I can go back and forth between, the customers. I would, hey, oh, we got a Spanish guy on the line, Jose, go grab him. They would put it on the line. I would talk to them about the whole thing. But when I was at Merrill, we're rolling out this particular product. And it's and I basically literally was the one who wrote the manual on it, right? But I had this guy that was part of the team that was going to do this rollout, and finally he got to the point where because I was taking over the meeting and I was talking, and of course he was a little bit higher than I was, so he asked me, so why should we even listen to you? Because at that time, Latinos, Afro-Latinos, and technology, we didn't exist. There was maybe 5 of us across the country, and, it was work. And we did the best job that we could. But as far as I'm concerned, the guy says to me, so why should I listen to you? In front of like 20 other IT guys that are going to roll out, we're going to roll this out. So I said, do me a favor, turn to page 21, please. Go down the names and find out who you're talking to. And that's where he sees author of the manual, Jose Marquez. Thank you very much. But that's exactly what we don't have to be doing. We don't need to be proving ourselves every day. We don't need to be fighting every day, because that's not the way it is for everybody else. You know, and just because I speak Spanish or like salsa music or drink coffee all day long because I'm Cuban, it doesn't give you the right to say, oh, well, you know, you're just a hire. And by the hire, they mean, oh, you're a diversity hire. I didn't have diversity, but you know what I found out about what diversity was? Probably around 10 years into my career. So around 1998 is the first time I hear there's a thing called diversity. And diversity wasn't us. So anyway, we can continue. Julie, you got any of those great stories to tell?
Oh, there's always great stories. So I have the fun part of, because I'm Latina, which means I'm a woman as well as being, you know, Latinx. You know, and I think there's probably a lot of folks on the line can relate to this. I think there's a part that is always being underestimated. I think one of the challenges I've always had is that people underestimate me constantly. I've decided that's a superpower, which I'm happy to talk about a bit more. But that, you know, I think, you know, because I look young, I present much younger than even I am. You know, I'm petite, you know, you know, I present a certain way. I think there's a lot of assumptions that are made about what I can do and what I don't do, right? Or what I know about or what I don't know about. And it's really funny because I open my mouth, I start talking. I think people start to realize quickly that like I will outschool you very quickly, but it's not and it's not even like an intention on my part. It just happens to be like how that dynamic plays out because of the assumptions people are making. So I think being a Latina for me, in many ways, the challenge has actually been around being underestimated. And what, you know, a story that really sticks with me is I just started my career, you know, what then became my actual career in diversity, equity, and inclusion now over 12 years ago, which time flies. I remember having an informational cafecito with this intern at NBC at the time, who was Latina. And I will never forget this conversation because I was raised by mom who made sure I was proud of my Latinidad, of my heritage, like every day. Like it was like constant, like you should be proud, you should own it, you should wear it on your sleeve. Don't care if people look at you funny or different because you speak two languages or you know, you eat arroz con pollo or whatever the hell it is, like, you know, like own it because it's your superpower, right? So I was raised with that. So I was wearing hoop earrings in the office, right? Long before I think this even became a huge topic of conversation, because for me, it was a signifier of being Latina, was like, I'm going to wear my damn hoop earrings every day and then we'll see what happens. And so I had this great cafecito with this young woman, and I'll never forget, she looked at me and she said, thank you for being unabashedly Latina every day, because it gives me the permission to do the same. And that, it killed me, it knocked me sideways, because what I realized is in each of us doing the action every day of owning like who we are, is that we give other people in our community the permission to do the same around us when they're in these places and spaces like Dr. Moray and Jose, you were just talking about, where we know they're not built for us. We know that we constantly are reminded that the culture is not the same, the language, the nuance, the way people relate, the, you know, the elbow things that, you know, these white dudes in charge often do that I don't even understand. And so we're constantly reminded of this, but it is in actually our ownership of self that we give each other that permission. And I think that for me was just, it just has stuck out in that moment of where you feel challenged, actually like turn that on its head and say, oh my gosh, how is that a strength? How is that a superpower? And how is that actually impacting somebody else who is in our community in a positive way? How can I make this something that's more positive for them? And I think for me, that's been one of the biggest takeaways thus far in my career. And when you think about challenges, that's where I like to go, okay, how do you take a challenge and flip it and be like, how can you make it a strength? And then where do we take that from here? And so that for me has just really stuck out year on year. And by the way, I believe that intern was hired full time, I'm not mistaken. And I was super proud. Anyway.
You know, Juliette, I'm actually really glad you brought up the fact that you said that people underestimate you, because people underestimate our community all the time. I mean,
All the time.
I know my cousin moved here, like when I was 16, he was about 17. He moved here from El Salvador and he moved in with us and we became his primary caretaker. And, you know, I went to high school with him and he underestimated himself so much. First of all, he didn't even think he could learn how to speak English originally. And then, you know, he learned how to do that. Then he graduated high school. And then my mom brought up the fact that she's like, oh, are you going to go to college? And he said, I can do that. He underestimated himself so much to the point where he didn't even think that he could continue his own education. And I'm really proud to say recently, this last semester, he's graduating with a degree in criminal justice. So,
Yes.
you know, it's something I'm
Awesome.
extremely proud of. And it's something that, you know, you bring up such a great point about that. You know, the whole community as a whole is just underestimated all the time, but we're a really powerful unit.
We are, and we have so many strengths that we don't even realize we have, like at this very like fundamental level. Like we're so multicultural. We often either speak more than one language, or we're very exposed often to at least more than one language, right? Which changes actually the way your brain is structured in so many different ways, right? And the way you can think and analyze things. We have a fluency of moving between, as Latinos particularly, this fluency of moving between different types of people and cultures and ideas, because that's how we were raised. That's our context, right? And I don't think we ever see these things as strengths, like we because we're in a system that often tells us their weaknesses, right? Or that we have to conform to something else. But, you know, just like your cousin, right? Like it actually, it becomes a superpower. Like the more you own it, Albert, that really resonated with me that, you know, then now you're seeing him like on the other side, like graduating, because that's what it should be all about, is us harnessing, you know what I mean? Harnessing that secret sauce that we have.
Salsa.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I'm really proud of. I mean, like I said, like my own struggles was with applying to colleges and getting through all of that. And I mean, just thinking about how that was for him, you know, he learned English, but he's still not extremely fluent in it. And just thinking about him having to go through and read all those terms and everything and trying to figure that all out on his own. I mean, it was a nightmare for me as somebody who's been speaking English for my entire life. You know, for somebody who literally just moved here 4 years ago, I couldn't imagine how difficult it was for him. So it's something I'm extremely proud of, and it's something that I'm just really happy to see.
I'm going through college applications right now. It's so confusing because I don't understand some terms, like AP courses. I have never heard about that before.
Mhm.
So college application gets so long and difficult. And well, thankfully, my parents are helping me a lot with that. I understand that some kids that their parents don't understand English, that might get so difficult and complicated. Actually, I wanted to move to one question I had for you. Well, I have always, as I mentioned before, considered moving to another country to continue my education. And I realized that whenever I thought about that, there was a constant fear popping out in the back of my mind that I wouldn't be like, I'll be treated differently because of my accent or my culture, or I wouldn't adapt to a new environment so easily. So I wanted to ask you if you had these same fears or different ones when you were moving or when you're starting a new chapter in your life.
Yeah, I think that everybody has fears. Everybody has um, that little voice inside of you that tells you, "Oh, I may not be good enough," or "I may," and you start to believe what you say to yourself, because that's the worst thing, is that you start to believe it because other people are acting weird with you. You know what? I'll tell you this. The best thing for you to do with, whether it's you, Guadalupe, or anybody else that's on this call, you need to believe in yourself much more, because think about this. You speak two languages. You come from a place that was probably having, you know, some sort of issue, and you've arrived here in the United States and you're succeeding. And you're going to succeed because of the mindset that you already have. forget about that little voice. That little voice is going to stay little because you need to talk to yourself here all the time. Hey, I can do this. I'm here, and there's a reason for me to be here. One of the things that I used to tell my family when we first got here, and everybody in my family spoke Spanish. Literally, I was the first one who spoke English until my father and my mother started, getting to work. And one of the things that I always told myself was, I didn't come here to waste time. I came here para meter mano, and to make things happen. And if it's not going to happen one way, I'm going to go around it, above it, underneath it. But I'm going to figure out a way to get this done. Because like this young man, like Albert's cousin or brother that came in from abroad, I think that he has shown us that if he can do it, why can't you? You can do this. You can do this because you have it in you. You're a winner. And if you got to tell yourself that every day, listen, every morning I say to them, you look good and I believe in you, and I do all these affirmations just to get out the house, because you need to put on your shield and go out there and get hit. Get hit a couple of times, see how it feels. And then you come back home and you say to yourself, okay, I can do this. So don't worry about, SATs, all of that stuff that you're doing right now. But yeah, no, I'll take that back. Please worry about it, but don't let anybody tell you that you're going to do, bad in it, because I think that you're going to do phenomenal. Look at all the work that you've done for NSTEM.
Yeah, I have to say NSTEM has greatly diminished that fear inside my mind.
That's part of the deal.
Totally.
That's part of the deal.
Yeah, one thing I would like to mention is, like just even about that, I've noticed a big thing amongst my own communities, sometimes our greatest enemies, even our own community, sadly. I know a lot of times, like I asked my mom this and I'd said, like what percentage of people do you think not encourage education in our own community? She said about 50%. I've known plenty of people, especially my cousin who was friends with some of the other kids. He was really close with them, other kids who came here from abroad as well. And a lot of their parents were talking about, education is not, it's not what we have to do. What you have to do is you have to get to work. You have to start working so that you can help pay the bills. To a lot of them, they don't even see education as an opportunity. But it's something that's sad. But
it is, because what happens is in their countries, they only understand that through hard work is the way you take care of your family, the way. And like if I told you my mother's an educated woman, or was an educated woman when she was alive, and my father as well, he was also educated, but coming here to the United States, the biggest thing is you have to be on point. You need to go and get your high school diploma. You need to have your college degree. You need to have all those alphabets that come behind you, PhD, MA, all of that. You need to have all that, because those are your tools to verify you in front of all those people that are trying to knock you down. I mean, look at Dr. Moray, for example. Look at Julie. The accomplishments that they've done, it's because of their skill set. And their number one skill set is, we're going to get through it and we're going to make it happen. And yes, he sits on an Eisenhower panel. And yes, she worked at Disney on a couple of great films. It's all your mindset and how you plan to get it done, because it's going to get done. Might as well be you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go right ahead.
I would ask Julianne if she would like to comment on either of those questions.
Oh, Dr. Moray, I was going to ask you the same question.
Go ahead. I'll back cleanup.
Say it again.
I said, you go ahead. I'll do cleanup.
You're going to back cleanup. Look at that. I think, for me, so much of what I've learned too, when you think about the sort of fear factor and all of that, is that you don't have to do things alone. I think a lot of times we feel the weight, at least I feel this way, the weight of our entire community, like on your shoulders, right? Because Dr. Moray, you talked about it, like being the lonely only, as a former colleague of mine, Mahim, would always say, you feel like the lonely only. And so you feel like in every single instance, you're representing the entire community, right? Like in every way. That is an enormous and insane amount of pressure to put on yourself, which also can create these moments of doubt in a really extreme way and of failure in an extreme way. And I think that part of realization for me along the way was that you don't have to go at it alone, actually, that there are so many people out there who not only want to help you, but who want to partner with you, to get things done. And sometimes they're within our own communities, right? And sometimes they're outside of our own communities. And I think that so much of where my mind goes these days is around coalition building. How can we be building more connection between us as a Latino or Latinx community and communities across the board, because we're so diverse, but also with other communities that intersect with our own in so many different ways. And so when I think about that little voice, I always think about who can help build the choir that drowns out the little voice. So it doesn't just have to be me singing. And I think that, if filmmaking has taught me anything, and I would say this is the same of any scientific or technological endeavor as well, a team makes something. It's never one person, it's a team. And I think that when I think about, the films I've worked on, everything from Coco to Black Panther to Soul to Encanto that's coming up in November, hundreds of people worked on those projects, hundreds, right? And what is so beautiful about that is that there's a little bit of everybody in all the different frames of the movie. And so it's not that the whole picture, right, was just one person. It was all of us working together toward the bigger thing. And I don't know, for me, that is where I have found so much sort of solace, but also so much support when I have that fear factor, I have that doubt. And then the other thing I would add too is, if you're somebody who wants to do sort of advocacy work or change work, right, which is what I've endeavored with so much, I'd like to remember the same thing, which is, again, none of us are doing this alone. And there were a lot of people who came before us, a whole lot of people who came before us to get us to where we are today. And our goal is to move the ball down the field just a little bit more, so that the people behind all of us, right, those who are much younger than us or not born yet, can then pick up the ball farther down the field. They can kick it in football. They can kick it closer to the goal, right, closer to the next step. And that if you realize that your job is just to contribute a little part to that bigger thing, I always think that always feels to me both so much more manageable, but also so exciting, because then I know, I'm part of something bigger than myself. And that has always helped me too. So if you're thinking about, specifically that change workspace or the equity and inclusion space in any way, keep that in the back of your mind. We stand on the shoulders of giants, and other people are going to stand on our shoulders. And how exciting that is. And that's really the endeavor that we're on in this life. That's really the goal.
Yeah, I would say I love what Julianne said specifically about finding cohorts, right? Finding colleagues, finding like-minded individuals. There's an old adage, and papi siempre y abuelo siempre tenía mucho dicho. And so I have lots of sayings that kind of, you never want to turn into your parents, or your grandparents, but you always kind of do to a certain degree, right? So there's an old adage, actually, it's African or Asian, that different people say where it comes. But if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Any journey that's going to take a long time, you always have a better chance of success when you create a team that will help you get there. And Julianne brought this up before. She's in a unique situation compared to myself or Jose, in that she is a woman and Latinx, right? She's a Latina. So, and that's the thing, we have to understand that the struggles that we face as a community, as a Latinx community, is very similar to other underrepresented communities, whether it's LGBTQ, whether it's the struggles of women's rights and women's equality and pay equality, whether it's African-American equality, whether it's, there's all these groups that we can't forget that our particular community has gone somewhere and has made progress, but we cannot forget that other communities need our help. And likewise, we will need their help, and we're stronger together. And sometimes we try to divide each other and say, oh, well, that's not my fight. That's not my struggle. I'm a man. I don't need to be helping that struggle, you know? But no, this is a humanity struggle. This is a like-minded, like community struggle, and we have to be there for each other, and we have to help each other. And at the end of the day, we are better for it. And Guadalupe, to your question specifically about fears and about going to new places, first of all, traveling anywhere, experiencing new people, new types of environments, new types of exposures, I think honestly that is the greatest education anyone can ever have.
Without a doubt.
If I was president of the United
1,000.
States for a day, the one thing I would require all Americans to do is 2 years in the Peace Corps, 2 years in the military, 2 years to go out and travel and see the world, get out of your little bubble of where you are in, you know, rural Atlanta, you know, outside of Atlanta or in New York City or any place where you grow up. Just go out and see something different, and you will learn so much more about yourself, about the world. You'll be able to experience and have commonality with other humans in the fact that they're not just abstract, right? You think about places you've never been, and they have such depths and such rich culture, and they're so different than what we see on television or on the internet, that people everywhere have the same types of struggles that everyone else faces, and they have the same type of joys. When you go experience those things, it will change you in ways that will just make you better. And then from a purely fear perspective, I view the greatest thing that it took me to learn to be successful, and I still struggle with it, is understanding that failure, which is what you're really fearing. There are all sorts of failures. Understanding that failure and discomfort is exactly where you should be. If I walk into a room and if I feel like I am the smartest person in that room, I'm probably not in the right room. I need to be somewhere where I'm constantly challenging myself, where I'm constantly taking skills that I've already built and bringing that to the table, but understanding that I am working on something with a group of people that are going to stretch me in ways that I haven't been stretched before. And that's how you grow. That area of discomfort is how you grow. So embracing that fear is something that's difficult for anybody, difficult for everybody. But if you get to the point where you can embrace it and you understand that failing is a part of a knowledge growth process, and failing is more important than success, that is a place that you need to be in. You will get so far. And Albert, to your question about education, it's a problem. It's a huge problem. And that's a huge passion of myself and Ad Astra. And that's why I created Ad Astra, is because I see the wealth generation within tech. I know I've been in Silicon Valley, I've been in Boston. I see these places are so much wealth. And then you see things like Hurricane Maria, and you see Puerto Rico and the way we struggle because we're a tourist economy. And understanding that look at pandemics. The pandemic has affected the BIPOC community in multifaceted ways. We've been affected because of healthcare inequality, and we've been affected because of income inequality. Because Hispanics or people that come from lower socioeconomic status in general, we're the ones that are on the front lines for the most part. We don't have those white collar jobs where we can work from Zoom. So understanding that generational wealth and getting communities that are underrepresented within the science and technology is exactly what NSTEM is trying to do, exactly what Astra is trying to do. That is so important. We need to inspire our communities to go into those fields and understand that we do need to study, we do need to progress. We need to challenge ourselves, because that's where wealth is generated. But that story of, oh no, I got to go out and go work and support my family, that's not a story that's just for Latinos. That is a story that is of anyone that comes from a working class community, which that's our community. I grew up, I remember in my barrio in Caguas in Puerto Rico, like if I had a basketball for Christmas, that was my one present for the year, and I was fine. I was happy. You know, we come from poor communities, and we have to embrace that, because those communities also build great strengths. You know, everyone knew each other in our barrio. Everybody was helping each other. Everyone gave each other a hand. And we have to take the ethos that we bring from those communities, that same passion of the reason why everyone's going out to work, it's because they're going to support their family. So that's an amazing thing to take with you, but take that and push it to the next level. And let's go out and let's go into Let's be the names in artificial intelligence. Let's be the names in private equity. Let's be the names in additive manufacturing. Let's be the names in nanotechnology and xenobots, whatever. We can do it. We have the capability to do it. And then we build our community and we build generational wealth over time. So it's important to challenge that. And that's why the things that Julianne worked on, the things that Jose is working on, the things that we're working on, I think is very important. We need to show our communities and inspire them to go into these fields. And media is a hugely powerful tool to inspire people and to give hopes and to give dreams to individuals. And that's what we need to do. We need to inspire them so that when we go and talk to communities, so I know everyone wants to be reggaetonero, or everyone wants to be the next Celia Cruz, right? Or everyone wants to be the next Jose Canseco, Juan Gonzalez. But realistically, it's a lot easier to make 10,000 nurses than it is to make 10,000 LeBron James. We can make scientists at a level that will create generational wealth, that will truly uplift communities like nothing else. So it's important for us to try to change that mentality that you mentioned, Albert.
Yeah,
I mean, if you look at the numbers, I mean, even the numbers make it, if we're the biggest, if we're 1 out of 5 Hispanics, or 1 out of 5 in the United States, then why are we more disappropriated when it comes to jobs? The majority of the jobs that are low wage jobs are handled by Hispanics, 25% of the population. So we need to encourage that next generation, that 17.9 million of the nation Hispanic population that are under the age of 18, that technology is the way to go. That media is the way to go, because as long as we're creating and we're not consuming, we can make a change. And that's the only way that's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, even recently, like I know in my own experiences, I've seen a lot of companies really, really stressing, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I know all you guys and all of your organizations stress that as well. I mean, even here at NSTEM, we have our acronym IDEA, which stands for inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. And just like you guys, it's something that we stress so much, and we try to offer equal opportunities to everybody. There's so many minority groups that struggle, and like you were saying, Dr. Moray, we all have to help each other. We're kind of all in this game together. So,
Yeah.
we all got to work hand in hand and really just help each other out, because that's all we have in this world is each other.
Albert, we had a congressman here that was amazing. His name was, now I forgot his name, imagine. But he just recently died. And one of his sayings was, we may have come here in a different boat, but we're all in the same boat together. And he was an amazing person. And I'll tell you very much, old timers disease is getting me. So.
Are you thinking about John Lewis? Is that who you're
John
thinking?
Lewis, that's right.
The best. Yeah.
Yeah, John Lewis. I was ready to say John Gibson, but
Oh, different person.
Oh man.
Jose, it's funny you bring up John Lewis, because as we were talking, Dr. Moray, you put in the chat, good trouble, because that was his expression. It's also the documentary about him, which is, he would always say, you got to get into some good trouble. And I remember meeting him. I met him twice before he passed. And it was in the context of diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And what was amazing, and it stuck with me, is exactly, Jose, what you were talking about, that we all came in different boats, but we're all in the same boat. And he specifically at the time, what had the sort of call out Me Too movement had just really taken shape in the women's movement, or kind of what probably third wave women's movement. And he was so amazing. He was like, women today, they're getting into some good trouble. And then he was like, and so are LGBTQ plus people, and so are people with disabilities, and so are Black people, and so are Latinos, and so are AAPI folk, right? And what was amazing is, in his age, he was the only living member of the original 10 of the civil rights movement out of the South in the 1960s that was still alive. Everybody else had died. And that he had lived to see all he lived. And what he was professing was, we're all in it together, all the way up till the end. And that for me was just transformative to, this man got his head bashed in for us to have more rights today. Got his head bashed in for us to have more rights today. And he was talking about it as a we. And that, if that doesn't, you know what I mean? If that doesn't set us on the right course here with this, what can? Because that's really, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, is us getting into good trouble together. And by the way, backing each other up, especially when the other person is not in the room. That is the most important thing. It's not just when people are present, but when somebody's talking about somebody else and you back them up in that room, that is what we can do for each other 9 times out of 10, right? Because our whole responsibility is to keep pulling each other into rooms, right? Keep the door open. Don't let it shut behind you. You get an opportunity, right? So it's all about, so much of Jose, what you were just reflecting on from, John Lewis and what he did every kind of waking moment. But Dr. Moray, what you were talking about, and, we're sort of tied together in this, and that responsibility comes to each and every one of you who's on this call too, by the way. Just because you're at whatever stage of your life, we can all make impact. We can all hold the door open. So even in your classrooms, or, as you enter the working world and you're feeling like, oh my God, I'm the new person here, doesn't matter. You're going to hold the door open for somebody else. You're going to make sure that somebody else gets pulled in, because that's what we can do. That's what we can do, like on the daily,
While we're on a positive note, actually, I would love to switch over. I know that being a part of the Latinx community, there are a lot of challenges that come with it, but there's also a bunch of opportunities that come with it too. I mean, and I would love to hand the mic over to Guadalupe to ask a question about opportunities in our field.
Thank you, Albert. Well, I'm talking from a position where I'm expecting to be having this opportunity because I have lived all my life in Argentina. But I want to dedicate to medicine. And I expect that being bilingual will be extremely useful in that file, because it will allow me to communicate with a broader amount of people. And I wanted to ask you guys if you have, in your experience being part of the Latino community, is being bilingual the greatest benefit you have, or it has opened other doors for you?
Well, I could give you another story that's pretty funny. When I was working in corporate America, I was one of the rare few people that can speak. Like I said, I could speak to the janitor, I could speak to the CEO in both English and Spanish. So every time I wanted a raise, I would make a phone call. Hey, I'm an engineer and I speak English and I speak Spanish. Are you guys looking for a bilingual engineer? And all of a sudden you'd hear, yes, we are. And I said, well, I'm looking for a $10,000 bonus. Can you make it happen? Every year I went from Verizon to AT&T to MCI to Sprint, from Sprint back to AT&T, because I needed $10,000 more. And by the time I finished at MI8, which was my last corporate job in 1997, right? A couple of years before September 11th, I had already given myself about $40,000, $50,000 just on my Spanish alone. So I recommend everybody, if you're not taking Spanish classes, listen, you guys got it made now. There are so many different applications and things like that that you should be using. Like, I mean, what we had was, what was the name of that group? Hey, Follow Me. That was what we learned Spanish with. I don't know if y'all remember this, but this was like a library of videotapes. I know you two don't remember. I don't think Julianne remembers, but I think that Jose could remember. He probably was very young when my parents bought these darn videotapes. ¿Cómo estás? How are you? The guy had a worse accent than I had. But that's what we had. Now you guys have all sorts of different apps and things that teach you how to do it, analytically. And there should be no reason why Latinos don't speak Spanish. There should be no reason. However, not everybody gets a chance to speak Spanish. So, you know, do the best you can, learn as much as you can, and continue to move things forward, because when you get into corporate America, you're going to call the shots. And you're going to tell them, okay, well, I want, this is my, when they give you an offer letter, you're not happy with that offer letter, tell them, I'm sorry, I can't work for this amount of money, because money is not the most important thing when it comes to work. And your language can make you make a whole lot more money for sure.
Julianne?
Jose?
Either way, I'm also fully bilingual. Spanish is actually my first language también. And my abuelito, talk about the relatives with dichos, Dr. My abuelo had many, many good ones. And what he used to always say that speaking 2 languages or more was the biggest asset or the biggest strength that you could ever have. And he said, and it will change your life in ways that you can actually not imagine today. And I thought he was full of crap, basically. I was like, nah, because I grew up here in the, stateside, and I spoke it, but I was kind of embarrassed, quite frankly. So I would switch to English. My mom made us speak Spanish in the kitchen so that we would actually speak it. And then she forced us to study it in school, which I'm actually very grateful for, because like my brother and I speak grammatically correctly these days and can write it and read it as well. And so I'm eternally grateful for them, because actually it has been a strike. So for example, when I went to Google and I started, they needed somebody to cover Latin America. And so I was able to take that opportunity, because not only was I Latina, but I at least spoke Spanish and I could figure out Portuguese. Basically, it was Portuñol. And what was amazing is, Dr. Moray, as you were kind of reflecting earlier, the ability to actually work professionally outside the United States in the region was transformative for me in multiple ways. And that opportunity would not have come, I am convinced, if I hadn't been already fluent in 2 languages. And by the way, when I talk about that part of my career, it is one of the most attractive things to employers now, as I talk to them about what I do and the experience I bring, because not only are they getting somebody who's a seasoned diversity, equity, and inclusion professional, and somebody who's actually a seasoned storyteller working with people in media and understand how story works, right? But that I also bring the fact that I can do it in 2 languages and that I'm multicultural on top of that. And there is no, if you want to edge people out of jobs, meaning like you want to get that role, you want to do that piece, as you were saying, Jose, like if you have that component, you take confidence that you can write your ticket in that half the time.
Absolutely.
Because the next person sometimes doesn't. And so that's your edge, right? All things being equal, you've just gotten another opportunity because you have that with you. And then the other thing I'll say, that just really profoundly, the reason my abuelito would say that is because when they left Cuba in 1960 with no money, like $20 and what they could carry, and they landed in Miami, the reason he was able to get a job within 24 hours is because he was fluent in Spanish, because the insurance company that he happened to know a guy in Texas that he had met whenever a million years ago said, oh, they're looking for somebody to help open the office in Puerto Rico and they have to speak Spanish. I'm going to put you up for it. They'll pay for your English classes.
Nice.
And that is how my family ended up in Puerto Rico and how they were able to survive, is literally because he spoke Spanish. And so when he was saying it, it was coming from this deeply profound place that opportunity in the United States presented itself to him because he had that super skill. And so if that's any confidence, I think that is also something to kind of keep in mind and take with you as you go, that it's such an amazing strength on multiple accounts. And by the way, learn more than Spanish if you can, which is, I think everybody should speak multiple languages, but that's another another webinar.
Absolutely.
Completely agree. And I'll give you another dicho as to why I think our grandparents were so wise. That goes, que más sabe el diablo por viejo que por
Que
diablo.
pues sabio.
Hey, so that's
Yes.
why they were so
Oh,
well, right?
my mom says that.
Yeah, yeah.
También.
Oh man, I have they'll keep coming out. They'll keep coming out. But to your question, well, Jose, I'll answer your question then, Guadalupe. Is I did have I am old enough to remember VHS tapes, but I do not remember that series. I'm sorry.
Follow me.
Follow me, I'll look it up. But yeah, to language question specifically, I concur with both Jose and Julianne. It's such a huge strength. There's no one ever that will ever tell you, oh man, I'm so happy I only know one or two languages. Like one of the only like common regrets that people have is like they didn't speak it, the same types of, more languages. So it's such a huge strength. And to Julianne's point, the more that you know beyond even just Espanol is so powerful. The reason it's so powerful is because one of the greatest things that you can ever do is have that humanity bond, be able to speak with other people and learn from them. And the more languages you have, the greater chance you have to learn from people, learn from different cultures, learn from different stories. Julianne's an expert storyteller. And we as humans, that's how we bond, and that's how we teach, and that's how we love, and that's how we create friendships and camaraderie is storytelling. That's been who we've been for millennia. The very first things that we did as humans to be able to pass on knowledge, to pass on who we were, is to tell each other stories. And that's ingrained into our DNA. So the more languages you have, the more opportunities you have to hear someone's story. And the more you have to connect with someone, the more you have to grow as a person, as an individual. From a medical perspective, it's huge. You will always have more opportunities to help more people. And if you have the heart of a physician, if you have the heart of a doctor, you have the heart of someone that wants to give their life for other people. You talk about John Lewis. That's kind of the ethos. It's ingrained. And if that's in you, then you'll want to speak to more patients. You'll want to interact with them. But one thing I would add is something that Jose said in passing, where he mentioned that he can talk to the janitors, he can talk to the CEOs. That's something that's really important to remember. The more languages you speak, it's not just to talk to a certain level of person. Remember that everyone has an important story to tell, regardless of what level they are in life. And sometimes, especially in hierarchical structures or patriarchal structures specifically, we tend to only try to communicate with peers or above us because we're always looking to kind of get to the next level. Don't forget that everyone at whatever level they are, they have a story to tell, and they have something they can give you, and they have something that they can teach you. Wisdom can come in so many packages. It can come in a child of 5 years old, or it can come in an abuelo of 85 years old. So always stop to listen to stories, and the more languages you can learn along the way, so the more stories you can learn and the better you can learn, do it.
Amazing. Thank you
And
so
I'll
much,
tell you,
guys.
I felt it was the great equalizer. And now, even now, right, where our numbers are literally, I'm a crazy person for numbers. We are 6.8% of the tech workforce. Doesn't that open up a whole lot of opportunity if you know how to speak another language? Just think about that. 6.8. That means there's 94% out there of jobs that we haven't even thought about going after. And it's all in tech. So we need to speak Spanish, understand every kind of code there is, and get into those businesses that'll give us the opportunity to live better and give us a chance to use our skills, whether it's speaking another language or understanding, code is a second language, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
so I would say, hey, code is Spanish first and code second, or code first and Spanish second. But either way, you better learn those two languages, because those two languages is what's going to drive the world for the next 25 years.
Amazing. I would like to say thank you guys for your responses to our questions. Believe it or not, an hour has already passed, so I'd love to open up the floor to the Q&A. We have some great questions coming in from the audience, so I'd love to ask you guys them. So I'm going to go ahead and start that. So let's do this. All right, so the first one is actually for Julianne. So Julianne, someone from the audience says, as a Latina woman who's had so much success, do you have any advice for young women interested in media or working with companies like Disney or NBC?
Absolutely. And thanks for asking the question. I think there's a lot of opportunity in media right now. So much is changing, quite frankly, as a business, in large part actually to technology and the intersection of technology and media. So first off, I would say, think about the opportunities in media in a very broad way. I think that oftentimes when we think about storytelling, we think about media, we often think about the things that sort of immediately come to mind in the sense of it's what's in front of us, right? So I'll be an actor, right, in front of the screen, or maybe you know writer and director, maybe you've heard the term producer. But if you watch the credits, meaning all of those names that come up after any piece of content, what you'll notice is that, as I mentioned earlier, there are hundreds of people's names, and they're doing all different kinds of jobs. And a lot of those jobs actually also intersect with technology now in very deep and meaningful ways. Everything from VFX, visual effects artistry, to animation, to the gaming world across pretty much every aspect of gaming that you could work on. There's roles and jobs there. We were talking about the metaverse before we started this panel, where there is only going to be more opportunities for storytelling and technology to intersect. So I'd say if you're interested in media, to think really broadly about what that means. And what's wonderful in having Google is that we can actually Google a lot of these things in terms of understanding sort of where the medium is going. Read publications. I always tell people, educate yourself on what's going on in the business of the thing you want to work in. Really great resources in media are the trades. So that's Variety and the Hollywood Reporter, which you can look up online. And that's where you can get a lot of the news about sort of what's going on in the business. And a lot of that will give you the headlines of what companies are focusing on, what content is being made, what deals have been made, especially when it comes to technology. And you'll often now actually see a whole lot of technology, what would be traditionally considered technology news on those different platforms. So really sort of, educate yourself sort of around the whole field. And then the other aspect very practically is that there are amazing internship programs and apprenticeship programs at all of these companies. So once you've done a little bit of research about sort of what excites you, because I think it's really important to think about what are the areas that excite you, because when you sit down with anybody at these companies to talk about an internship, or you send in an application for one of their programs, one of the questions they're going to ask you is, what are you interested in? So come prepared with a few answers of things that either you've read about or that are areas that you think, oh, that kind of piques my interest. You don't have to have it exactly, right? We're always all figuring out what we want to do pretty much every day of the week, no matter where you are in your career. But coming with some ideas, I think helps people help you, on where to guide you and where to direct you. And so I would check out very specifically, if you're interested, Disney has both an internship program and an apprenticeship program. NBC does as well. All of the animation studios do. So if you look up Walt Disney Animation Studio, Pixar, Sony Animation, DreamWorks, they all have internship programs. So if that's a medium you're interested in, there's plenty there. And also, if you're interested in the gaming world, the same thing is true there. And you can apply usually directly through websites, or your college or university actually may also either have connection or information for you in those different areas, because so many of the companies have been running them for so long. And then, thirdly, if you're really interested in storytelling and you actually want to make stories, the number one thing you can do is start making. And what is great today is you don't have to wait. If you have a mobile phone, a smartphone, the cameras on these, both either an iPhone or an Android or a Moto or whatever you have, all of the cameras are outstanding. So what I would say is, start actually filming stuff. Start trying to tell story through the visual medium and experiment. I'm going to tell you right now, your first stuff is going to be horrible. It's horrible for everybody. You're going to suck. That's okay. Sucking is good. It's what Dr. Moray talked about, is going toward the failure is really just going toward experimentation and making yourself uncomfortable. And what's going to happen is you're going to start learning by doing. And you don't actually have to wait right now. You can go do that tomorrow. And whether you upload them to YouTube or you keep them to yourself, or you upload them on Snap or on TikTok. That is up to you, what you want to do with the content. But go and start filming today if you're really interested in the visual medium for storytelling. And then the other thing I recommend with that is get some great books about structure and storytelling. We as humans really like patterns in our storytelling. It's a thing. Dr. Moray talked about it. We go way back with this as a medium. So there's some things we like. We like some act breaks. We tend to like a certain, following a central character, like all of those pieces. So a couple of really great books on screenwriting that are out there are Save the Cat, which is a really great one. Another one is Story by Robert McKee. So Save the Cat, Story. And then I'd love to promote my friend Kelly Edwards' brand new book, which is if you're interested in working in television specifically, it's called From the Executive's Chair, and actually came out yesterday. And so From the Executive Chair, and it's Kelly Edwards, Ewards. And so just in case you're really interested in story specifically and learning more about that as you kind of go out and film and experiment, some great resources for you.
Awesome. That's some really amazing guidance. Also, I'm so happy you brought up the whole thing about failing. I mean, like when I started my internship at NSTEM, I was originally assigned to the blogs team and I had no idea that I could even write. And I failed so many times before I even came up with my final draft. But, it's just part of the process and you learn so much from failing. Even the best scientists in the world fail 100 times before they come up with a solution.
I want to make emphasis in that point you make about applying for an internship. I know that being an intern in STEM has taught me so much and opened so many opportunities for me. It has made me so much confident in myself. Like it has empowered me so much. I mean, I'm 17 years old. I'm standing in front of you guys. I feel this awesome. And I'm so thankful for all these opportunities. So if you can, go and apply for an internship.
Awesome. Actually, the next question's for you too, Guadalupe. A member of the audience asks, as a young Latina applying for colleges, have you found any resources from American colleges that help Latino students better understand the admission process? If not, panelists, what can she and others like her do to figure out how to enroll in American colleges?
All right, so actually every time I have a doubt about that, I went to Google. Like the pages of the universities helped me a lot. And if I couldn't understand, I usually write emails to the university, and most of them have replied and have been very, they have been very patient with me actually, because they have explained things for me and given me resources. The university's pages usually give that to you, but I have received help from many friends that already went through this process.
Yeah, I know I've talked to Guadalupe a lot about this process too.
Yeah.
We've had plenty of meetings, and at the end, we just stay and talk a lot about applying for colleges. Do you panelists have anything to say or have any advice for Guadalupe? All right. If not, oh, never mind.
You could try, I think what Guadalupe is doing is a great way to do it. It's a great way to do anything in any kind of industry, just cold calling and networking and trying to find things. Yes, the internet's an amazing tool. Google, YouTube, there's a lot of things that you can just get from that perspective. There's some companies that do focus on these kinds of things. I know there's one called, well, obviously NSTEM probably has a ton of resources on their website. So I would definitely check those out. And then I know there's some companies like AssistSTEM that tends to help college graduates or get you into college kind of applications through the application process. The National Hispanic Fund, Hispanic Scholarship Fund, has a lot of resources on their website as well. And they also have some research that they've done for, I believe, 10th through 12th graders. They have special internships that they can do as well, that they can apply for, that are obviously completely paid for, that kind of help prepare your child for the college prep process and for the college life process. So those are some that I know off the top of my head.
And usually every January, right after Christmas, we post on our Tech Latino website all the different scholarships, internships, and opportunities there are for students. so that by the time it's May and you guys are ready to make that transition, whether it's to college or high school, or getting out of high school or getting out of college, you're able to go there and fill out as many of those applications as that we have on there. Usually it's about 52 different kind of internships, and the Hispanic Caucus has one that's really, really good because it pays for your all summer long. You go out there and you become like an aide to either a senator or congressman. And then basically, they usually keep those aides pretty much. I've seen many of friends of mine now that I would say, wow, you got your start in politics because of this. And that's with a lot of them. So it's a great opportunity. And like I said, techlatino.org, you can go on there and you'll see in January, we should have it posted, so you'll know.
Awesome. I know also, oh, I'm sorry, were you gonna say something, Julianne?
Oh, just summing up.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I know like a big struggle or a big fear that people have going into college. I know I was a personal fear of my own is actually paying for college or university. It is a large amount of money, but there's always stuff out there that'll be there to help you pay. I mean, there's scholarships and grants like NSTEM alone. We have our own resource library that we have literally millions of dollars worth of scholarships and grants that you can apply to and have access to. But moving on, I'd like to move on to our next question. So this next one's for Dr. Moray. So another member of the audience says, I have read one of your children's books and it was just so inspiring for my child. Why was writing these books so important to you?
Oh, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Kind of mentioned it in passing. It's, I've worked, my career I've been very blessed. I've been very lucky in my career, working with some amazing companies, amazing projects, and at the level that I've been able to do them on. I've lived the life that I've chosen to live, and I've been very happy with my decisions. But oftentimes I'd be the only person that came from a Latinx or Hispanic background, or sometimes the only person that was of any diversity within the project, including neurodiversity, gender diversity, disability diversity. And that common thread is it's part and parcel of what the problem is. We know that there is a systemic inequality within this country. We know that part of that, a great portion of that, comes from socioeconomic status. I view a lot of the comorbidities, so I speak a lot from a physician's background, a lot of the comorbidities that come from being lower socioeconomic status. You think of living in nutritional deserts, you think of living in healthcare deserts, living in digital divides. All of those things can be tied with a lot of the data with socioeconomic status. Socioeconomic status rises, then those comorbidities tend to go away. We tend to be able to live in places with better healthcare, better education, better nutrition, better safety. So how do we do that? What is the most powerful tool we have to start getting inspiration into our kids from the very earliest ages, which a lot of the data shows us from 4 to 6 is where kids really start dreaming, start perceiving who they can be. So it's media. Media is a huge, powerful tool, and media is something that's become even more powerful during the pandemic. Right? We spent so much time in all sorts, and as the metaverse comes out, there's going to be new ways that we're going to be consuming media. So understanding that we have a very powerful tool to be able to inspire hearts and minds, to be able to get them to dream about going into these roles. But understanding that it's not just those books, that series of books is 4 to 6. I think we have 15 now books out, total in different languages. We do Spanish, English, Dari, which is the most commonly spoken language in Afghanistan to help with the refugees that have come over recently, and then our bilingual books. But we have content that we're developing for 6 to 11 with our comics. We have shows that we're working on that we're trying to pitch to some of Julianne's old colleagues as well. And our goal is to create content, not just from 4 to 6, but all the way through college, so that we can keep that momentum of inspiration going, because we know, especially for BIPOC, especially for LGBTQ+, especially for girls, we tend to lose them, even if they're very good in STEM. We tend to lose them when they get into middle school. Why? Because no one else looks like them. There's a lot of reasons. Those are some of the things like that. And if you're going to inspire them, you can't be what you can't see. So we have to be telling those stories and having those diverse characters. This is Julianne's whole career, but mine's focused specifically on STEM, is trying to get kids to have those roles that they can look up to. And there are so many stories. I mean, Jose has been leading Tech Latino with thousands of engineers. There's so many stories of successful Latinos doing amazing things within tech, but we don't tell them. We don't tell them, again, because of systemic inequality issues. We have a very—
It's because of that darn saying, los niños hablan cuando las gallinas mean. That saying stopped me from doing a whole lot of stuff.
That is a very
always
old,
does.
That is a very, very old dicho. I love that one.
You see, I told you I was old.
It's good. It's good. I like that. Grandma and grandpa used to say that one too. But that's the thing. So that's what we're trying to do. We're creating. And it's had been happening over time. You know, I've had a lot more opportunities to speak with kids and seeing kids that are so inspired to be reggaetoneros or be, baseball players or whatnot, and understanding that those are great dreams to have, but realistically, the way you create generational wealth is to transition from being having 3 minimum wage jobs, which everyone busts their butt, everyone does, everyone works 100 hours a week, and we have the inspiration, we have the motivation to do it, but if you can transition that from making 30,000 a year, 20,000 a year, 40,000 a year, to now having large swaths of underrepresented communities making 6 figures, low 6 figures. That is something that people cannot ignore. That is how you actually create power and you change dynamics. And so that's our ultimate goal. That's why we're a social impact company, and that's what we're trying to change. We're trying to change those dreams so that in 10 years, 20 years, those numbers that we all know, the 2%, the 5%, the 1%, and as you go up through the executive branches, it's ridiculous, right? So as we can kind of move people through that and we can inspire them through that, that's what we're trying to do. That's why I created those books, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Thank you so much for that response.
Sure.
So for the next question, somebody in the audience asks, if you could give one suggestion, what would a Latinx middle school student do to prepare for a potential STEM career? And this is opened up to the floor, but I know that you specifically, Jose, you work with Tech Latino and students in this exact situation. So if you could speak a little bit about this, that'd be amazing.
Well, again, I'm going to say, coding is that second language that you need to have, because what's happening is everything is of course, is digital now. And whether you go into the film industry or you go into the tech business, it's all based on, ones and zeros. So understanding math, understanding taking math for real, and not say, oh, mathematics is for nerds, or I was a nerd in high school, man. I didn't have a problem with it. I played football and I was a nerd, and I there was, like I said, nothing can stop me from doing what I put my mind to. So my biggest thing would say, learn as much as you possibly can when it comes to coding. You don't have to be a coder, you just need to learn the language so that way you can understand what's going on around you. Also, I think that there's going to be a tsunami of jobs coming soon that have to do with business analytics, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and maybe again, robotics and learning, machine learning. I think is an extremely important discipline to get into. And again, it's all done with coding. It's all done, through cybersecurity right now. I mean, every day you're hearing about another hack, and it's because we don't have enough of those guys what happened was we gave the keys to the castle to somebody else, and then all of a sudden those guys who have the keys to the castle become bad actors and are selling all of our data out there. And we need to be able to confront them. We need them, I mean, look, I'm an ex-army guy, so I'm always going to say, listen, if you want to go to school and you want to learn something that's above and beyond what you already know, join the army. In my time, that was a good idea. But the army gave me a lot of skills that right now I would say was the reason why I was able to do all those things. So, that's another option. But again, like I said, the most important thing is learn to code, understand cybersecurity, understand what it is, what is VX, and what are all the little things that you need to do to to play games. How many things are gamified nowadays? All these things are the future of our community. Our most important thing as an organization has always been to give those ideas, forward-thinking ideas, so that way you can make that decision for yourself. But I'll tell you right now, the jobs are coming, and we don't have enough guys in cyber jump into the cyber game.
Yeah, I'm really glad you actually mentioned that. I mean, the school I go to, RPI, is originally just well-renowned engineering school. And literally within the past 5 years, we've gone from the major of comp sci being 5% all the way to like 30%. Like half of my friends are comp sci students, and it's crazy how much of them know how to code. And it's sort of like a really, really interesting thing where each language is a little different, but you could kind of figure it out by knowing one other language. The way that they think, it just blows my mind. I've taken a comp sci class, and it's some really crazy stuff. And honestly, just doing it's really fun. It's a really great thing to get into right now. So I'm really glad you
Well,
brought
think
that up.
about this. Twitter was written on Rails, right? So Ruby on Rails, that's the way Twitter was written. So if you understand Ruby, I think Ruby could be the basis of everything else that you're talking about. Once you understand that, then you could start to look at different. But I mean, again, the organization has been doing this for many years now. I mean, we started when literally there was no internet. We were just making believe and telling people, oh yeah, we could do this. We had to figure it out once we got the contract.
Awesome.
So there's a lot of things that you have to think about when you're there.
I
In
would
school right now, I think cybersecurity is the way to go.
I would echo coding again, and Julianne said it also as well, how important that is. The one thing I would caveat to what Jose said is I don't see these as jobs that are coming. These are the jobs that are here now. These are the gaps that we have now. I mean, from a cybersecurity perspective, the United States is so far behind other nation states. It's really like kindergarten compared to Harvard, realistically, from a geopolitical perspective. So these jobs are here now. The other ones I would throw out there to really consider are things that you should be knowledgeable about or be learning about. Blockchain is revolutionizing things at a rapid pace. And from a financial tech perspective, it is there's a lot. Educate yourself on it, study it. There's a lot that's noise, but there's a lot at the core that is actually going to is revolutionary and will be the foundation of things in the future. And from a financial perspective, it has one of the greatest perspectives of actually reaching income equality that our current banking system, because of the way the system has created it, does not allow. BIPOC communities are making more money in cryptocurrencies and in blockchain-based kind of applications than anything else. So that's another big one to look at. And then anything involving the space sector. The space sector is going to be a multi-trillion-dollar industry. It will, and we're at the level
Absolutely.
in space where we were in the internet at the 90s. So it will revolutionize everything. So look at those things and be a part of that. We want to be a part of those stories. But coding touches everything. Medicine, the way I got into working, the way I became associate chief health officer of IBM was because I started learning coding after med school. And so there weren't back then, really a handful of physicians that were doing artificial intelligence and medicine at the same time. So that's where it worked. And then the same thing when I progressed to NASA, there weren't that many people with, you know, an AI background and a medical background. So that's coding has been foundational to my career, and it will touch everything. So you have to know it.
Awesome.
The only thing I would add too is that what coding also teaches is a way of thinking that, quite frankly, is so necessary for where we are and where we're going. And what I will echo is some of the most interesting people doing things in media are people who understand coding and coding languages, not because they're coding on the day-to-day basis, but they understand the logic and the thinking in coding and how it can apply to storytelling. And if you're somebody who's interested in the storytelling side of things, I also highly recommend, you don't think it this way, but I highly recommend also learning at least one, if not more, coding languages, because your ability to understand how the logic and thinking within coding, right, because it's a language, applies within storytelling will be exponential if you're able to do that. And you're going to be leaps and bounds ahead of other storytellers who have failed to do that thus far. And that is where everything is going. So the more in which you can connect those dots between what is story and the language of coding, the more you're going to be able to actually not only engage in what storytelling is now and in the future, quite frankly, but you're going to be able to help probably create it or craft it. And I think that a lot of how we should be thinking as a community is where everything is going, not where it is right now or where it's been, because we'll just keep playing catch up. We have to be thinking where everything is going. And so
Right.
I encourage everybody, if you're interested in storytelling, to not ignore that aspect, because it's all coming together. And I see it on the day-to-day basis in so many of my friends' projects and so many of the conversations that I'm a part of.
Awesome, guys. So actually the clock just hit 9:30, which means that we're going to actually wrap up the webinar right there. I'd like to thank all of the panelists for coming. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate you guys coming out. You are some amazing leaders in our own community. I'd like to thank everybody in the audience for showing up as well. We really appreciate you all. We really hope you guys all had a great time. This actual whole presentation will be it'll be available on YouTube. So share with your friends and families if you'd like. Also, I know there's a couple of questions that we didn't get to in the Q&A. We're going to try our hardest to get those answered, and we'll get those all out to you. But thank you guys so much. I hope you guys all had a great time. I know I had an amazing conversation with you guys. And yeah, have a great night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you all.
Bye. Thank you so
Un
much.
abrazo.
Igual, cuídate, chao.
Cuídate.